How's it going, everybody? I'm Evo of the Lineman Lounge, and today I'm coming to you with another episode of the short series I've been doing covering the 2023-24, well, the 2024 offseason, really. But as the 2024-23 NFL season wraps up, it's time for most of the NFL's teams to look ahead towards their future, especially the fan bases. A lot of those teams are starting their de facto off seasons already, except for two teams, which will be playing here in the big game this weekend. But I figured it's a good opportunity for us to take a quick look and a concise look at every franchise in the NFL, figure out where they're going to be set up heading into this offseason. A lot of casual fans think since player X is a free agent, then they should just be able to sign with team Y. And it's not always the case. A lot of things go into that. Potential free agents for a team, cap hits, new coaching changes, et cetera, et cetera. I've done a lot of the legwork. I've looked into each of these teams in depth, and I've got a concise write up for each of these teams. And basically, what I'm going to be doing is going over each of these teams with you. And today, we're actually going to be taking a look at the AFC West. So, with that, let's jump into breakdown. All right. So, Denver Broncos, let's ride. That was fun, wasn't it? For a little bit. And I'm sure if you're a Broncos fan, you are cussing me out right now because it's been a pretty shitty past 2 years. The team saw a little bit of life last season compared to the year before, but it looks like the Wilson trade was a abomination, a terrible move by the team, and that it's been a lot of missteps for this Denver Broncos team over the past couple of years. Hopefully, having that Walton group, the Walmart family, come in and buy the team is going to lead to better steps down the line. But starting off by hiring Luke Getzey, terrible. Um, or not Luke Getzey. We'll get to him in a minute. Nathaniel Hackett. Nathaniel Hackett was essentially a hack. He's one of the Aaron Rodgers, good old boy crony system. Uh, and obviously, he wasn't a very good coach, and it's proving that he's not a very good coach this year as well, either. You move him out. Russell looked terrible that year, and you make a trade for Sean Payton, who has a really good track record of being a head coach that can get his team into the playoffs. Um, there's a lot to dislike about Sean Payton as well, specifically his character and uh, his coaching style towards players. But you went out and got him, and hey, if you're going out and making a move like that to get your guy, I generally support it. The team was able to go 8-9 this year and get some big wins throughout the middle of the season, kind of show a bit of a spark. But they also did have a loss where they got blown out by like 70 points this year, which is unheard of in the NFL. Offensively, they were tied for 13th, and it kind of shows that bringing Sean Payton in and having a competent offensive mind in there to work with Russell Wilson, the pros and cons of Russell Wilson can make that offense decent. They've got good receivers in Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy if they're used correctly. And also, they figured out how to utilize those running backs a little bit. That being said, a league average style offense, and it was capped off by a absolutely terrible defense, a defense that saw them trading away players and leaving a lot of players out on the trading block. Obviously they lost Chubb the year before, and it's tough seeing a really good defensive end leave like that. But at least they got some compensation for it. Um, but man, it wasn't a very good year, and it all ended up boiling down in the end to what we all kind of thought. Sean Payton was not a Russ Wilson fan. Sean Payton wanted to move on from Russell Wilson, and they had apparently direct talks with him about next time you lose, we are benching you unless you adjust your contract, specifically injury guarantees, because their plan is to move off from him this offseason and find a different quarterback. Um, whether or not what they did was right or wrong, um, personally, it feels shady. But I can also see the business side of it. They don't want him playing, becoming injured, and then having his contract guaranteed in the next season. That being said, they're paying him an exorbitant amount of money regardless. And no matter what they do, they are going to be on the hook for a lot of it. And you can see that with their effective cap space as of right now. Currently, They're expected to have an effective adjusted cap space of negative $27.3 million dollars. And that is with losing some players, nothing super important that they are set to lose right now. That being said, because of the amount of cap space that they are negative by, they're going to have to part ways with some people or work some extensions. Jerry Judy is one of those names that gets thrown around a lot. Pat Surtain is being talked about a lot as a trade bait option. I believe he's still on his rookie contract though, and he is one of the better young corners in the league. So to trade away an asset like that, it would have to be packaged in a move, probably to move up in the first round to try to get a quarterback because you are moving on from Russ. Right now, the Broncos do have 7 draft picks this year, and the number 12 overall pick right behind the Minnesota Vikings. So it's not a super enviable spot for a quarterback. Of course, the top 3 spots are really what you want for a quarterback this year. Right now, chalk is that those 3 spots are going to be quarterback, though I think that there are some questions about if all 3 will go there. Even so, uh, when you're picking in those early teens, you have some debatably first round talent quarterbacks that will be there, but they are much more palatable to be taken in the end of the first round. That being said, if you find your guy, take him where you take him. If no one's going to care in 3 years if you overdrafted, let's say, a Michael Penix or a Bo Nix, if they turn out to be good and they're your guy. No one cares about that draft pick after the season if it looks good. So go after the guy that you want. Other than that, they do need edge rush help. They have no one there. Quarterback, of course, is a huge need, assuming that they're going to move on from Russell Wilson. Defensive line needs help. Offensive tackle needs help, and wide receiver probably will end up needing help, especially if they end up moving on from a Jerry Judy. Um, but yeah, it's a weird situation. I mean, Cortland Sutton theoretically could be moved too. Either way, the Broncos are going to probably have to make some really tough decisions this offseason. That 8-9 record, I think, is a little bit better than what they were. They kind of had a hot streak, like I said, in the middle, but we all kind of saw what type of team they were. And then once they dropped the ball with Russell Wilson towards the end, it was all downhill. So this Broncos team, let's ride. Maybe they'll get some more draft capital from a trade, but you can expect them to probably have to get rid of a couple guys. Now, a couple people that they were going to have to get rid of regardless. Inside linebacker Josie Jewell. He's not a top inside linebacker in the league, but he's definitely a role player and a high level special teamer at worst. Cornerback Kawan Williams, safety PJ Locke, center Lloyd Cushenberry, and tight end Adam Troutman. Again, all these guys, they're role players. No one is extremely important or pivotal to this roster. But you can't even really look at pending free agents and re-signing them when you are that far below the cap. So Broncos and a lot of this AFC West in general, they're not what we thought they were a couple years ago. I mean, a few years ago, we saw the AFC West, and it was, you know, Russell Wilson just got brought in. You got Derek Carr, who's coming off of a season where he looked like a potential MVP. You got a young Justin Herbert that looks, to be up and coming, outstanding. And of course, you've got the GOAT, at least greatest right now, in Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs. And this division looks a lot different right now. Next up, though, we will go with that Kansas City Chiefs team, who they're still playing football right now. They are in yet another Super Bowl. The Chiefs ended up 11-6 this year, having a relatively down year for them. Their offense was ranked 12th, and they were tied for 15th in defense. And to me, it kind of feels like those numbers almost should be flipped around because the defense seemed definitely above average to good for most of the year, and the offense was lacking star power. I mean, the receiving options in general were terrible. Kelsey was not what he has been in previous years. It took a majority of the season before Rasheed Rice really started to show himself as a good receiver. And I still think that as of right now, he's like a good complementary piece at number two. And they don't really have a good number one. And they have a bunch of other guys out there who just can't catch balls. I'm looking at you, Kadarius Tony. Um, sure, you're an NFL receiver, and that means you're a better receiver than me, but you ain't no number one receiver. Terrible take by yourself. You need to be a little more humble and figure that out. Uh, The team does need wide receiver, big time. They could use some refreshing along the defensive line. Also, offensive tackle. The tackle right now group that they have is so. So upgrading there would be a boon for them. And then they could always rebolster on the defensive side with more edge help, more cornerback help, even though they have a relatively young group there in the secondary. They do have 7 total draft picks this year, and as of right now, they'll have either pick 31 or 32. We don't know yet because they haven't finished their season. So props to them for that. Um, and I'll say this: I'm not against the Chiefs, and I don't dislike their fans or anything, but it is kind of getting old seeing the same team over and over again. I'm getting Patriot vibes, which caused me to have a disdain for the Patriots and not to really feel bad for the situation that they're in now. So not that I think that they should do bad, but it's kind of tough to do bad when you have such a good quarterback, and it's obvious that Patrick Mahomes is special in the offseason. Now, a weird question that has to be asked here is who's going to be gone from this team after the season is over? Now, I've got my list of pending free agents, and there's a lot of big names on there that they should look at potentially resigning some of them. That being said, Andy Reid is no spring chicken. He's starting to do a lot more commercials and things like that. And these are normally telltale signs of a guy prepping themselves and padding their pockets with a little bit more money before retirement. You also have Travis Kelsey, who is dating some pop star or something like that. I don't know. I'm not aware of it. But he's got a podcast with his brother, and he's getting up there in years and had a down season. If the Chiefs go out there and win a Super Bowl, I could see both Kelsey and Andy Reid retiring, and that's going to leave a big void for this team because Andy Reid is one of the best coaches, if not the best coach currently in the league now that Belichick is gone. And I think that as of right now, Eric Bieniemy, their former offensive coordinator, he's out there in the open. If they don't bring him back in some capacity, if not as a head coach, I think it would be a big mistake. Bieniemy returning, though, on that offensive staff would be huge for them this offseason, and if no one else grabs him up, I absolutely think that they should go after him. Again, defense has a young secondary. Bringing in some more youth to that front seven, though, which is aging out a little bit, would be smart. As of right now, pending free agents, defensive tackle Chris Jones, yet again, he's going to be expensive if they want to bring him back. Mecole Hardman, they brought him back partway through the year, didn't really do a lot for that passing game, so probably okay to see him walk. Safety Mike Edwards, linebacker Drew Tranquill, who came in on a 1-year deal, I believe, um, provided some solid depth to him there, so I could see them resigning him. Left tackle Donovan Smith, he was not as good as their previous left tackles, so someone that you can consider walking away from, especially in a strong draft class full of tackle help. Running back Clyde's Edward Alaire, he's just kind of a guy there. Guard Nick Allegretti, linebacker Willie Gay, running back Jerick McKinnon, defensive tackle Derek Nandi, tight end Blake Bell, and cornerback L'Jarius Sneed. Sneed is probably a priority re-sign, even though he is getting up there in year. He's kind of that veteran in the secondary. Um, yeah, the Chiefs, they've got a lot of free agents. They, as of right now, have an expected adjusted cap space of $19.1 million. And obviously that can grow a little bit, moving some of Mahomes' money around and stuff like that with his contract. Um, and they do have 7 total picks. So they are still set up to be competitive next year, especially if they re-sign some of these guys. But if honestly, if they are able to add a true receiving option there in their wide receiver room, um, they're gonna be, you know, talked about as a contender in the AFC right again. They're not gonna take some huge dip. So, if they make the right moves, which I fully expect that they will, it's a well-run franchise, they're gonna continue to be a perennial powerhouse. Now, if they skip on the wide receiver room again, I have some questions, but we'll see. All right, next up, we have the LA excuse me, Las Vegas Raiders, and, I have thoughts about this team. So the the Raiders ended the season 8-9, started off real bad, finally fired their head coach, and interim head coach Pierce came in, brought a new fire to that team. Again, one of those former players, linebacker for the Giants, and things kind of turned around. The players really got behind him. Uh, Offense ranked 17th, but you were playing Aiden O'Connell a rookie quarterback, a late round rookie quarterback as your main guy. Um, Defense ranked ninth, especially due to Max Crosby. This team needs a quarterback. No fault to Aiden O'Connell. He looks like a good developmental piece, but I don't know that he's a starter level quarterback in this league. Um, Definitely a solid top end backup though, and they've got him under contract for a while, so that's good on them. They could also use cornerback help, offensive tackle help, defensive line help, wide receiver, and some edge rush help. They do have 7 total draft picks and are picking 13th overall, but again, they're just like the Vikings and the Broncos ahead of them in a weird spot to try to get a quarterback. Uh, but then that leads them to the offseason, and they didn't officially have a head coach, even though all the players wanted Antonio Pierce. And ownership and Mark Davis kind of bent the knee and brought Pierce in. Now, I like Pierce a lot, but if you had the option of possibly going out and get a Harbaugh or something like that, I kind of feel like you have to do it to an extent. You're going to upset the players and stuff like that, but your goal year in and year out, your goal for the next 5 years isn't to appease the players; it's to win a Super Bowl and become the best team that you can. And Antonio Pierce could do that, but you might have had an easier route with the Harbaugh, and you might see a Pierce team flop this year. We just don't know because we don't have the history. It's easier to go for a sure thing. That being said, Antonio Pierce is named head coach now. I support him 100%. I know that my friends who are Raiders fans are very happy that he was brought in. Um, and other than that, I mean, the team is kind of set up to be in a good spot. They don't have a ton of big time penny free agents. Running back Josh Jacobs and defensive end Bilal Nichols are the two main guys that they're looking at who are free agents. And with 31.4 million in effective cap space, they have the capability to resign those guys, restructure, and even go out and get a couple free agents. They have enough draft picks to go out and kind of build this team as well. That big question mark really does center around who the quarterback is going to be. Now, the Raiders could be one of those teams that tries to get aggressive and move up into the top 3 to get a Jaden Daniels specifically. Jaden Daniels was the quarterback for Arizona State University when Pierce was a coach there. They have a connection, they know each other. And as far as scheme fits, I think the scheme should hopefully generally be open there for the Raiders. But location wise, it's a great fit for him. Jane Daniels has always played in the South, in hot environments, domed environments. The other options are basically for him to go to Washington or New England or another team that trades up. And both Washington and New England don't necessarily make sense to me, despite needing a quarterback really bad. It's cold, hard nosed environments. We don't know really if Jaden Daniels is going to be successful there. Um, that being said, the Raiders go out and they make a big contract offer to to an offensive coordinator that no longer wants to be there. Right before they were supposed to sign him, their offensive coordinator, and I'm doing the Pierce here. He doesn't want to talk about names of people who aren't on his staff anymore. But he goes out to Washington, and they have to go for the side piece, I guess, in Luke Getsy, and that's where we get back to the Luke Getsy bit. Luke Getsy was offensive coordinator last year for the Bears. He looked pretty terrible. He is also a spawn of the Green Bay Packers coaching staff that probably was getting propped up and boosted up a little bit more because of Aaron Rodgers being there. Um, but Getsy did a pretty terrible job there in Chicago last year. You have a mobile quarterback who's kind of up and coming, and you're not utilizing his skill set very well. So Getsy coming to the Raiders, probably not the best get. But if you're going to go out and get like a Jaden Daniels, I really don't like that offensive coordinator hiring because we saw how he didn't utilize Justin Fields correctly. And you take a quarterback with a running capability akin to Lamar Jackson and you put him with that offensive coordinator, doesn't feel like a great fit to me. But we'll see. I don't know if the Raiders actually have enough balls and enough picks to really move that far up in the draft and go get themselves a Jaden Daniels, anyways. Um, Raiders do have some really nice pieces in place, though. They do have Devontae Adams at wide receiver. That relationship hopefully will get better with a better passing game, better quarterback play. Sorry, Aiden O'Connell again. Props to you for what you did this year. Um, though he has been talked about as a potential trade partner. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers would love to have Devontae back. I don't know if they can really afford that though. Josh Jacobs probably should come back on a team-friendly deal because he was championing, Antonio Pierce and being the head coach of this team and said that he'll be back for sure if Pierce is brought back, but if he's not, he's for sure gone. Um, and then you have Max Crosby. Max Crosby has gotta be top 3 edge rusher in the league right now. He's a hot thing. So they need a quarterback. They need some other pieces, but this is a team slowly coming up, especially if Pierce is able to continue what he's been doing this season. And worst case, if you have to go into the season with Aiden O'Connell, I would still probably look towards quarterback, but it's not the worst thing. I mean, you were able to be average this year with him as a rookie for a majority of the year. Another year under his belt. Yes, a new offensive system, but a year in the league, he should hopefully get a little bit better and provide a little, at least one more win to you there. So this could be more of a 9-8 team next season, maybe 10 wins, but I wouldn't bet on it just yet. All right, and our last team here in the AFC West, the Chargers. So the Chargers go out, they make a big splash hiring after firing Brandon Staley, who was a terrible coach, and they get Harbaugh. So Harbaugh played for the Chargers back in the day. Now he's there in LA, and he's inheriting kind of a dumpster fire situation minus one position, and that's quarterback. They have Justin Herbert. They have the guy. He's under contract. He is a very good quarterback, in my opinion. But everything around him is old, decaying, eroded on bad contracts, and it's going to be a lot of work to get the ship righted. The Chargers were 5-12 last year, tied for 22nd in the league offensively, but that was with Easton Stick for a lot of the year and a lot of injured wide receivers. So it makes sense that they were that low. Defensively, they were ranked 20th, which is a bit of a surprise because they just looked bad, which is sad for a Brandon Staley led team who's a defensive coordinator for the Rams initially. Um, they need wide receiver help bad. They need tight end help bad. Cornerback, defensive line, offensive tackle, probably running back, and edge rusher as well. This year, they do have some bigger names that are possibly going to be walking away because they're pending free agents. Biggest one being Austin Eckler. Eckler did not look like the same guy this year, but this wasn't the same team this year. Eckler potentially was going to be holding out. He wants a new contract, and they weren't willing to pay him top end running back money. And I get that with the way that the running back market is. But Eckler was such a big part of that offense up until this year. And so seeing him walk away, it could be really difficult. I mean, not only is he good at running the ball, but even more so, he's a better receiver. Um, and that's a big piece of their identity. But this is a cultural shift here, bringing Harbaugh in, who really has most of the control of the team. Harbaugh in Michigan has been running a very run heavy offense. Um, so bringing back Eckler could maybe be a possibility, but it's going to be tough and tight to do that when you are 55.3 million over the cap, effective cap space as of right now. There are ways to help get closer to being cap positive. We'll go over those here in a little bit, but it's not going to be an easy task for them. Uh, they are also expected to lose tight end Gerald Everett, linebacker Kenneth Murray, quarterback Easton Stick, who was that primary backup, wide receiver Jalen Guyton, one of the guys who had to play a lot this year due to injuries to Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, running back Josh Kelly, and kicker Cameron Dicker. Cameron Dicker, the kicker. Yeah, I love that. Guys that weren't mentioned there, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Keenan Allen getting up there in age. Mike Williams is a little bit behind him. Both of them are solid receivers, but both of them getting hurt a bunch and both of them getting paid quite a bit. These guys probably are gone from this team. Um, it'll be really weird to see a Chargers team without Keenan Allen and without Austin Eckler. But that's what we're probably looking at as of right now. I mean, both those guys, just in order to get cap positive, it's probably a necessary cut. You also have the the second best Bosa brother out there, who has been underperforming a little bit and was on this underwhelming defense in general. Um, and opposite of him, you have Khalil Mack. Khalil Mack still is a solid defensive end edge rusher, but he's getting paid way too much for his production. And maybe that is just partially because of Staley's defense, but either way, you probably have to walk from him. Uh, those 3 guys should hopefully get you very close to being cap compliant. Obviously, some other moves will help. They do have some young pieces that are nice. Tuli Tupulotu, will be in his 2nd year. He had a really solid 1st year. You have Asante Samuels Jr., in the backfield, Derwin James is taking a little bit of a drop. I suppose that he's a potential guy that could be traded as well. And all these guys that I'm talking about that potential cuts, they could be trades as well, for sure. I mean, all these guys can play in the league still, and all of them would be wanted by a lot of teams out there. So any of those guys listed could basically be moved or cut. Um, yeah, and then on offense, you have Rashawn Slater. He seems like a solid offensive tackle. Again, injury concerns there. But beyond that, it's kind of a blank slate for Harbaugh and the Chargers to kind of rebuild this team. Now, one move that they just made that I'm not a fan of as well is with offensive coordinator Greg Roman. Greg Roman was offensive coordinator for this team, I believe, or at least an offensive coach for the 49ers, who were led by Harbaugh at the time. Um, so there's some familiarity there. Most recently, Greg Roman was the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, not this year, but last year. And you see the dramatic jump from Lamar Jackson when he was under Greg Roman to when he was under Todd Monken. Todd Monken was able to develop Lamar Jackson much more as a passer. I think Greg Roman hates wide receivers. I think Greg Roman hates the passing game. He wants to have a team be successful based off of its running game. And that kind of fits with what Harbaugh did in Michigan. Uh, we don't know what JJ McCarthy really is as a prospect because they didn't use him. Like, very rarely was he asked to pass with volume. It was all based on that running game. And it seems like as of right now, based off the coaching staff that they're bringing in, they're getting set to be a running team here in LA. And you have Justin Herbert, you have a good quarterback. And if you don't utilize him, it's a failure. That being said, I have faith that Harbaugh is going to be able to turn this around. I don't think it's going to be in a year. It might take 2 or 3 years, but Harbaugh can turn this team around. And he does normally have a lifespan with teams of around 5 years. So if they're not competing for a championship here in the next 5 years, I will be a little bit surprised. But they've got a lot of work to do to get cap compliant. They've got a lot of players that will probably be moved one way or the other off this team. So if you're looking to poach some talent, Chargers might have that available for you. With that, that is our wrap up of the AFC West. Hopefully, you're enjoying the series. Let me know how I'm doing. Uh, like and subscribe. Comment below your thoughts on the AFC West, what people need to do, uh, how AFC West can be improved, or if certain teams are just up shit's creek. But until next time, I'm Evo, and I'll see you later.